Today we're going to build our own handheld memory game machine by ICStation. It's great soldering practice. We're going to solder all the components onto PCB, and by the time we're done it should be playable. It's a lot like the game Simon. When you press start, the game will beep and a series of brightly colored buttons will light up. You need to press the buttons in the corresponding correct order to pass the level. There are 99 levels. You can pass the level by listening to the sound or watching the colored buttons light up, and with each level it gets more and more difficult. This item was sent to me as a free review item by ICStation, so if you're interested in buying one, I will leave a link to the product in the description, so check that out. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and empty out all the contents and see what all I have. They do include a data sheet with some instructions. Unfortunately it's all in Chinese, but you can go to their website and scroll down a little bit. You can see a red button where you can download the English version of the instructions. I have my version of the instructions right here, and this is exactly what I will be following from. I've checked all the parts and pieces and I have everything I need, and I separated it out, and now it's time to start soldering. Step 1, make sure the music IC has been installed on your PCB. It's that chip right there. Step 2, install the 100 ohm resistors at R1 through R4, and also at R7, R8, R9, and R10. I've got all my resistors placed in R1 through R4. I'm going to flip it over. And now it's time to solder each one of these in place. Now this happens from time to time. I don't get good flow and it starts to build up on the end of my tip. And rather than try to continue to make it work, I'll just simply clean it with a damp sponge and then twist it into a brass wool cleaner that I have. And then as you can see now, it works a lot better. But I really need some rosin paste, I think. I am by no means an expert at soldering, so if you have any tips along the way, I am all ears. But I've had mixed success results with these types of kits, but it is good practice to do this. And I'm just going to clip the wires off here to make it look nice and neat. Now I'm going to do the 4 on the bottom part of the PCB here, and you can see them here as I'm pointing them out. Next, we're going to solder our two 10K resistors, and we will solder them. You can see they're labeled here on the PCB right there and then right there. Next, we're going to solder our diodes in place with the black part to the right, and this will allow current to go in one direction, and it does that by having low resistance in one direction and a very high resistance going in the other direction. And we will solder them in right here and right here. And here they are soldered in place, as you can see, with the black part to the right. The next thing we're going to do is solder the IC socket in place, and you'll notice there's a notch on one end of it on the left side. You want that notch to match the diagram of the notch that's printed on the board, and it should look like this. Now the first thing I'm going to do is solder just a couple pins in place just so that it's more secure while I'm doing all the other ones. this is what I got so far. As you can see, there's some good and some just okay. I should probably stop bending the wires, the components through to hold them in place. As you can see, the wires are kind of pointed in all different directions, but overall it's okay. Now it's time to solder and place the LEDs into these 4 squares. And remember, the long pin is positive and the short pin is negative, and it does matter which direction you put the pin in the PCB, so pay attention to that. Next, we're going to solder in our 3 ceramic capacitors, and those are the ones that say 104 on them. One will go right here below the socket that we just soldered. It'll go right there, and it doesn't matter which way you put it in. I've placed the other 2 ceramic capacitors on the board, one on either side of the music chip, as you can see here. Next, we'll solder in the 8550 transistor. This is it right here. Next, we'll solder the S9013 transistor. And that one goes right above the socket that we soldered in and right below the 2 diodes. Push it in there nice and snug, straighten it out, and then you can solder it. Next, we're going to solder the 7550A 3-pin voltage regulator, and that one goes right here, right above the 8550 transistor. Just push it through and be ready to solder. Next, we're going to solder the 470 microfarad capacitor, and that's the bigger one of the 2. This capacitor diagram on the PCB has a positive and a negative. The negative has lines through it, as you can see on the picture, and the positive does not. So make sure the long pin, the positive pin, goes through that side with no lines, and then the negative goes through the side that has the lines on it. Now we're going to solder in a 10 microfarad capacitor. Remember, the long pin is positive, the short pin is negative. Put the positive pin through the side that has no lines, and the negative pin through the side that has the lines on it on the PCB, just like last time. Next, we're going to install the 2-bit digital tubes, and that will keep score for us on the front of our handheld game. When you place them on your PCB, you want to make sure the decimal point is on the bottom, and you can tell by the numbers being on the bottom here. So you want to put them in the right orientation. All done soldering the digital numbers in, and I will trim these wires back a bit. That is all done. Now it's time to solder the wires on my speaker. I will solder the positive wire on the right and the negative wire, or the ground wire, on the left. But first I want to put a little bit of solder on the pads before I attach the wire to make it a little bit easier. So I've tinned the pads here. I've got a little blob of solder on either side before I put the wires on. Now I'm putting the wires for the speaker through the back, and I will solder them on the front. Kind of reverse of what we've been doing. Now it's time to connect the 9-volt battery socket, and I'll put it right through the front of the board here, and I will solder it on the back. Now it's time to put the IC in the socket, and this part you have to be careful because you need to bend the pins just a little bit to get them to fit. So don't bend them too much or you can break them off. I'm all done, and this is what my board looks like before I put it in the plastic casing. Now we need to use one screw to attach the PCB to the plastic casing so it doesn't jostle around inside the case when you shut it. Now it's time to put the 9-volt battery in the case. It's kind of a tight squeeze. After that, we're going to put the silicone buttons over top of each of the 4 LEDs. Then we'll secure the case shut with 4 screws at each corner on the back. Well, I'm all done here, and the only thing I can tell is that the number 2 doesn't show up properly. And that could be a number of reasons, including soldering, maybe something that I did, maybe one bad component, who knows. So next time I change the batteries, I'll look around, but other than that, I think it works pretty well. I've used it quite a bit, and I'm happy with it. One thing I've found out is that I'm not very good at this, but if you pick it up and play with it in your hand, it's much louder.